All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jonathan Todd, and I'm the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Philadelphia International and Northeast Airports. Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon for what's going to be a really great conversation with some of the leaders in the greater Philadelphia region. I will be very brief. I just wanted to provide a couple housekeeping related items for this afternoon's discussion. If you aren't speaking as a panelist, if you could please remain muted until the Q&A portion of the session. If you'd like to, during that portion, to raise your hand or utilize the chat to ask questions, you're more than welcome to. Throughout the conversation, if you'd like to utilize the chat to ask a question, you're certainly more than welcome to, or just if you have a sentiment to provide, etc., please utilize the chat function. Then once we have our Q&A portion, we will allow folks to ask questions. You can use the raise hand feature. With that, certainly want to get things started. And before we jump into the conversation, I just wanted to introduce our Chief Operations Officer here at PHL and PNE, Keith Bruni, to provide some brief remarks.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you, Jonathan. Apologies for our CEO, Shelley Cameron, who's under the weather and not able to be with us this afternoon. We're looking forward to a great roundtable discussion. Very exciting stuff. So that's really all I have to say. Api, take it away, please.
Thanks, Keith. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Asian American Pacific Islander Roundtable. I'm really excited to moderate this discussion. It's officially actually the second time I've celebrated Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, even though I celebrated 365 days a year being Asian American. It's only the second time I officially celebrated it, and the first time the Division of Aviation is recognizing it. So I'm really happy to be here to moderate this discussion with our distinguished panel, who you see on the screen. I'm going to introduce them. I'm going to provide a brief bio of them, but I know they have a very extensive bio, but we want to save all the time for our discussion. So I'm just going to provide a brief bio. Starting with Inez Setiabudi, is the president of Dan Food Service Corporation and currently operates and supervises Arby's in Columbia and BWI Airport in Maryland, Smashburger in Dulles International Airport, Gachi House of Sushi in BWI Airport, and 3 Gachi Sushi and Noodles at Philadelphia International Airport. Welcome, Inez.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Hello, everyone.
Next up is John Chin. He is the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation, PCDC, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to prepare, protect, and promote Chinatown as a viable ethnic, residential, and business community. Welcome, John.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Next is Irfan Mandani. He is the president and CEO of New York Ice Cream, Inc., and operates 10 stores in Philadelphia and New York, including Dunkin' Donuts, Smashburger, Bruegger's Bagel, and Jamba Juice right here at Philadelphia International Airport. Welcome, Irfan.
Thank you, Api. Thank you for having me, and glad to meet everyone virtually.
Thank you. And last but not least is Sophie Heng. She is the Senior Business Development Manager, Creative Economy at the City of Philadelphia's Department of Commerce and is focused on the implementation of economic development initiatives for the city, including business attraction and retention efforts for the creative economy. So welcome, Sophie.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody.
Great. So thank you again for joining us, taking the time out of your busy day to join us. And before we dive into the discussion, I wanted to start with the icebreaker question. So for those listening in, I did not give them this question, but I did warn them that I was going to ask them a surprise question, a really tough, controversial question that they're going to think really hard to answer. So last week, my group, the Capital Development Group, held a dessert tasting event. It was called East Meets Sweets, and we tasted Asian American and Pacific Islander desserts that people made and bought. I think I counted about 20 different kinds of desserts, and I made sure to taste every single one of those. So I think it was the most amount of sugar that I've ever eaten in a 1 hour period, and it was an epic day. So my icebreaker question to you is, what is your favorite Asian or Pacific Islander dessert? And before you answer, for those of you joining this Teams call, if you want to use the chat box to type in what your Asian or Pacific Islander dessert favorite is, we would love to see that too. So feel free to type it in. But for the panelists, who wants to go first? Irfan, Mr. New York Ice Cream Inc. Is it ice cream?
I would love to say ice cream, but you asked specifically, of our heritage. You can never go wrong with a mango lassi.
Ooh.
And, so any day, any time, or even for breakfast is good.
I'm with you there. Mango lassi, sign me up. Who wants to go next? Inez.
Let's see if people can remember this. Brown sugar, boba, bubble, jelly, pudding, tea.
Oh, wow.
Boba tea, yes. So I introduced our Chief Administrative Officer, Delisha Wells, who's also on this call, to boba tea a month ago. She had never had it, and I'm going to leave the rest up to whether she wants to share it or not. But I did introduce her to that recently. I'm a boba lover, Inez, just like you.
Just quickly. Oh, it was good, but it was kind of strange to chew my tea. And so I got the black tea with the tapioca pearls.
Yep.
And the tea was good, but chewing that tapioca was very, very strange to me. But a great experience. You should try it.
Good. At least try it once, right? For anybody who hasn't tried it, try it once. And a classic, I think I always like to recommend the milk tea. Like a milk tea as a newbie to try a milk tea, but Delisha, we'll try again. We'll try again next time.
Absolutely.
Sophie or John?
I don't know any names. I just know the food and the texture. So there's in Southeast Asian culture, like Cambodia and Laos and Indonesian, there's like a jelly that is saturated with like the sweet condensed milk type of thing. I don't know what the name is, but that's one of it. It's not sweet and it's just perfect for like your sweet tooth. So I'm not a big sweet person, and that dessert is like the best thing that you can eat with, with the moderation of it being what it is, right? I don't know what it is, so I'm sorry.
Condensed milk, can't go wrong with condensed milk on anything. So Inez, were you going to say something? Did you know what it is? Do you know what it is?
It could be what Indonesian people call ice cendol. Maybe it's like it has some green bean, red bean things. Maybe Mr. Johnson knows better. I mean, like each country might have something similar, but in Indonesia we call it as cendol.
John?
Okay,
this
is a hard one for me, but I'm going to pick the egg custard tart. It's really, really yummy, and you can find it in any bakery in Chinatown. My personal favorite really is black sesame soup. It's a hot served soup. It's sweet, and it's really good, but it's hard to find.
I haven't had, I think I've had the egg custard thing before. That sounds familiar, but not the hot, what is it called again?
It's a black sesame soup. I will bring it to you next time.
Well, I was going to say, all of you are going to get an invitation to our next year's dessert tasting, and yes, please do bring whatever you can make or buy, and the offer is on the table. So thank you. That was fun. Desserts are always a great topic of discussion, and we always like to celebrate a lot of activities with food around here. So I thought that would be a fun question to ask. So May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, a celebration of Asians and Pacific Islanders in the United States, but it wasn't always a celebration. So I wanted to provide a little bit of history before we started having our discussion, and I'm going to share my screen while I talk a little bit about it. So can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So after an initial failed attempt in 1977, in June 1978, a resolution proposed that the president should proclaim a week, which is to include the 7th and 10th of the month, during the first 10 days of May of 1979 as Asian Pacific American Heritage Week. The resolution was passed by the House and then the Senate and was signed by President Jimmy Carter on October 5th, 1978 to become public law. The law, however, did not designate the week as an annual celebration, and community organizations and advocates were required to submit new requests annually to have the bill reauthorized. Go to the next slide. In 1990, the week expanded to a month after a new bill was passed by Congress and signed into law by President George H.W. Bush. Even then, the proclamation did not include an annual designation, and the president had to reauthorize May as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month annually in the coming years. It was not until 1992 when legislation was introduced that would permanently designate May as the commemorative month, a legislation that became law after receiving unanimous support in Congress. And on May 1st, 2009, President Barack Obama signed a proclamation recognizing the month of May as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, what we call it now, AAPI Heritage Month. And if you're wondering why the month of May for AAPI Heritage Month, the month was chosen to commemorate the immigration of the first Japanese to the United States on May 7th, 1843, and to mark the anniversary of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad on May 10th, 1869. The majority of the workers who laid the tracks were Chinese immigrants, and that's the history of AAPI Heritage Month. I didn't learn about this particular history in school, and it was only the last couple of years as I was doing research on AAPI Heritage Month that I looked it up and I became familiar with when it started, how it started, and how it came to be today. One other thing I wanted to share with all of you is also the term AAPI. So who falls under the AAPI term? It's a term used to describe a very diverse and fast-growing population of 23 million Americans that includes roughly 50 ethnic groups with roots in more than countries. And for reference, I wanted to show this map because according to the United Nations, there are 48 countries, that's at 48 countries in Asia. So the next time you're having a conversation and somebody says Asian food or that person is from Asia, you should think, what do they really mean? Where are they really from? There's 48 different possibilities of that. And so I just wanted to highlight that, which actually perfectly aligns with my first question to all of you, which is, what is your heritage? What's your background? And can you share something that you're proud of about your heritage? Sophie, do you want to go first?
Awesome. Okay, I am Cambodian, also known as the Khmer people. That's what we call Khmer. A background, I can recall that if you didn't know or may not know, we went through a civil war in Cambodia where it was the year of the killing fields where the Khmer Rouge, all Cambodians took it upon themselves to, kill off all of those who had any past knowledge of the Khmer culture. So everybody was, those who were murdered were like government officials, anybody with historical knowledge of Cambodia before that killing field and the term year zero. So my, families were forced from the capital to like the countryside to do work. And everybody was treated as equal, right? So there, the communist mindset is that, to eliminate the hierarchy and everybody work for their food and stuff like that. So, and this was during the time of the Vietnam War. Our family, my dad was militant and he, got his papers to come to America out of fear for, retaliation. If he stayed in Cambodia, he would have been murdered. So our family, landed in Philadelphia. So that is the story of how we came to America in the 80s. And what I am proud of Cambodians is that, you know, it's been a lot more, you know, activities and celebration that are now, you know, out there with the Cambodian New Year celebration. And I just love the sarongs. So I'm a fashion person, so I'm always thinking about how can I turn modern attires, I mean, not traditional attires into modern clothes, right? So the sarong and the fabric of Cambodia is beautiful.
Sarongs are, I think, very common in Asian, other countries too. In Sri Lanka, where what my heritage is, sarongs are also worn, you know, in the homes as well as outside the home. So thank you for sharing that, Sophie. Irfan.
Yeah, so I come from India, and one thing I'm proud of is the diversity, right? We have a slogan in India. It says "Anekta mein ekta." What it means is unity in diversity. So, you know, if I travel from one region to the other, you know, I cannot even understand the local language, but yet somehow the country comes together and we unify, and we take great pride of, you know, being an Indian, regardless whether you're from north, east, south, or west.
Thank you. And something you're proud of about India?
Yeah, just said, you know, the diversity, even though we might not know the language, meeting a fellow Indian, so the culture or the heritage, right from kindergarten, how you're brought up, brings you that, you know, passion, compassion for your country, and knowing the diversity. So that is inherited or, you know, ingrained upon us.
Yep, absolutely. I think I forget how many different languages there are in India. There's what, over, I'm going to make up a number, 20 or 30 or something really high, right? There's so much diversity in religion, languages, cultures, just within one country. It's really great. Thank you. John,
last I was in school, it was over 73 languages in India.
73, there you go. I was way off. I wanted to say 50, but I thought, no, 20, 73, got it. John?
Yes, so I'm Chinese. My family comes from China and Hong Kong. But I was born here in the United States. I was born here, right here in Chinatown, Philadelphia. So never left the home that I grew up in. And something that I'm proud of my heritage, I think the traditions are something that we look forward to every year. So for instance, the Chinese New Year is a big holiday. And it's just not a celebration, but there's a formality and a tradition on how different generations of different age groups participate in the Chinese New Year's. So it's a fun time for children, because the married adults and the older generations pass around these lucky envelopes. They call them red envelopes. And in the envelopes are cash money, and the kids can't wait to get that, collect red envelopes. So they'll go to relatives and adults and collect them throughout Chinese New Year. So that's a fun activity, Chinese New Year's. And it's because it's so formulated, it's a tradition that I really like.
Absolutely. I also celebrated Chinese New Year. I have family members that are from Taiwan, so I'm familiar with the culture. And Year of the Tiger, right? 2022 is the Year of the Tiger. So thank you. And Inez.
Hi, I'm originally from Indonesia. I moved to US around year 2000. I work for a friend who is a franchisee of Arby's in Richmond, Virginia. And then, you know, USCIS rules, the work permit cannot be renewed all the time. So I want to stay in the US, so I switched to investor visa. So I was introduced to Arby's headquarters by my friend. But since the territory in Virginia already belonged to him, I had to get out from Virginia. So Arby's headquarters helped us to find location. After we talked to some malls, because mall is smaller space, so it's less investment for us. So we opened our first unit, which is Arby's franchise in Annapolis Mall, Maryland, and then expanded to BWI Airport, and then expanded to Columbia Mall. And then we we developed our own brand because at that time, BWI Airport was lacking of fresh new concept. So we proposed Sushi, which is our own brand. So that's how I started our own brand in the US. I knew Irfan from years ago because now we're also in Smashburger family of franchisees. Something that I'm proud of my country, there is this tradition, they call it gotong royong. It's basically work together towards a common goal. Normally the villagers in Indonesia, because of their economic condition, they could not afford a contractor or architect to design their small houses. So people in the village, usually they try to chip in for free, whether this their energy, their knowledge of building small houses, or somebody donated construction materials and somebody else built the house. And they just take turn. The villagers just take turn helping each other and the newcomers. So
beautiful tradition. I love that. And I know when you shared that with me last week, I said, I think there's something very similar in Sri Lanka too. It's not called gotong royong, but family members chip in, right? Especially to family and others in the community. And it's not necessarily expected to be paid back in money, but when they're in hardships as well, you know, there's this understanding that you will be helped as well. So beautiful. So just the five of us, you know, I'm Sri Lankan, Sophie, you're Cambodian, Irfan, you're Indian, John, you're Chinese, and as you're Indonesian, there's 5 different countries out of that 48 countries that are part of the Asian continent. And, you know, unfortunately, we couldn't have 43 more people on this round table because we don't have all the time to have this discussion, but just this is a great glimpse of just a little representation of the Asian continent. So I'm going to ask the next question. And before I ask the next question, I wanted to play a video that kind of cues up what the question will be about. And wish me luck, because sharing a video on Teams isn't always easy. So I'm going to do this.
Technology.
Yeah, technology. I'm trying to make this more sophisticated, but sometimes it'll backfire. So can you guys see my screen? Okay, I'm going to hit play and hopefully you all can hear it.
Youngju, you are perfect.
Youngju.
But I know it won't always feel like that. Your name will make you feel different. Like they don't want to get to know you. But I promise there will be those who try.
Hey, Youngju.
The MVP award goes to Yeongjo.
It's actually
Youngju.
You remember what Youngju means? It means strong and resilient, because I know you will be. What a beautiful name. Can you teach me how to say it?
All right, so I got a little emotional the first time I saw it because I could relate to it. But our heritage, our identities, our names are important. And for many Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, our given names carry an even deeper history and significance. But sometimes bias, indifference, and even unintentional mistakes can lead to mispronunciation and even misidentification. And I know when we chatted, a few of you shared your own personal stories about this. So it would be great if you can share that with us today as well. And Irfan, would you like to start?
Yeah, certainly. It hits home and it hits so close. You know, here's a 17-year-old coming to New York. In fact, that was the first time I even sat on a plane coming to New York from India. So I grew up in a very remote part of India. So a lot of people know Hyderabad, but I grew up in a small town called Warangal, which is about 150 kilometers away. So getting to Bombay on the train, and then from there flying to New York. And I come in on a Thursday, find a job. In fact, the job was already aligned with the family members knowing in the community. Walk into a convenience store on Sunday morning to start my job. And first thing, my boss, she's a lady, I still respect her, learned a lot from her. She asked my name and I said, we can't call you that in America. So day one, my job is changed, my name is changed, and I have to adapt or adopt the name, or, because that happens. And, at a 17-year-old, you're not equipped to question or why, or, because it's a new country, you're adapting to the culture and everything, but learn to, grow up to that. But I would not want that, or I would not wish that on my kids or the future generations. So, I would like that to see.
Your story is all too common in that, I haven't had anybody in my professional career change my name, but in college, I did have a college professor. And just like you said, you were 17, I think I was somewhere 18 or 19, couldn't pronounce my name, and he chose to give me a nickname, and I didn't question it because, I was just a kid, and this is somebody that's older, that's a professor, and I'm taught to respect my elders and not really, speak up, even if it didn't seem right. Obviously now I will speak up, but it's something that a lot of Asian Americans, I think, can relate to, and probably also other ethnicities as well, not just Asians, but names that are not Western, right, is something that people go through, and that being given a nickname or having their name changed. Sophie, you also shared your story. Can you share that with us?
Yes. So I think name importance didn't occur until I got older, because as I said, we came to America in the 80s. I was still a kid. I just recalled, some memories you recall because it somewhat is important, but you at the time while you're experiencing it, it's not major. But when I was in second grade, I think this was when I first started school. So I'm revealing age. And as a Cambodian kid, I knew I was different because I'm in a school in South Philadelphia, predominantly white folks there. And the schoolyard lady was like, "What's your name?" And then I said my name, and she was like, shrugged me off and was like, "I'll call you Sophie." And that just like stuck with me, growing up. Like, if you don't, know how to pronounce my real name, which is Sopiep, they, call me Sophie. And that has been my identity with growing up, because you want to fit in, right? Because it's a culture issue, right? Coming to America, do I, honor my culture and identity as a Cambodian, or, assimilate and become Americanized, right? So as I grew up, I learned to appreciate the name Sopiep. So it's like everybody has been calling me Sophie. So now I hold that more personal to me. So when somebody calls me Sopiep, I looked at them like, do I know you? Right? So it's like a stranger, like you're a stranger to me. So if unless you're my close personal friend or family, like that name Sopiep shouldn't, it just feels weird coming from a stranger to call me Sopiep. And then just sharing a little bit of based on the video, like my mom was in a refugee camp and, trying to sell, products, making stuff to feed the family. She would leave me as a baby in a hammock, and when she returned, and no adult supervision, so when she returned, I was like covered in my feces, and it's disgusting, right? I was just covered in it. And she asked the neighbors, did you hear her cry? And it was, they're like, no, the baby was quiet. So the name Sopiep means quiet and reserved, and that's why I was named Sopiep.
Thank you for sharing that. And you, just to make it clear to everybody, you do want to be called Sophie, because now you're very protective of your Cambodian name, Cambodian name, Sopiep, right? So I don't think I'm a stranger to you, but I will still respect you and call you Sophie, because that's what you have said to call you. And I think it's important that we do talk outwardly and proudly about how we want to be called, right? And if somebody says something and mispronounces it, to correct them. And I haven't always been comfortable doing that either. And I'm glad that now you've taken ownership of your name and are making it clear how you want people to call you. So thank you for sharing that. John, you have a aviation themed story here. So can you share, I think it's fun too. So can you share about your name and yeah.
Sure. Any way that you guys can tie in aviation to this overall panel discussion? Oh, well, my father, when he emigrated to the United States back in 1964, he flew in an airplane and sat next to a passenger who was an American, and they were had a stopover in Texas. So my dad didn't speak any English. This American spoke no Chinese. But lo and behold, as I grew up as a kid, every Christmas we would always get a Christmas card and letter from John Ebner. And I think it just shows that language is not so important, but communication and mutual respect and mutual desire to learn from other cultures and befriend other people is probably the most important thing. They both left such a strong impression upon one another that my dad chose to name me John after the stranger that he just met on an airplane coming to America. So that's my story for John.
It's a great story. And you didn't share that you guys don't eat, why don't you guys eat anymore? Because this.
My dad, first introduction to hot dogs in America, he never ate a hot dog because John Ebner, who was that American passenger sitting next to him, was the owner of a hot dog factory in Texas. And when my dad visited that factory, he realized pretty quickly that he will never ever want to eat a hot dog.
Yes.
He does not eat hot dogs.
Yeah, great story. No, great story. Inez, I know when we talked, you didn't have anything to share here. Did you want to share anything on this topic?
I'm afraid I don't have anything to share in this topic. I'm sorry, guys.
No worries, no worries. We're just having a discussion. So we talked about our name. So my next question to you all is, how did you and how are you still balancing your AAPI identity in your professional journey? Did you encounter any obstacles? And if so, how did you overcome them? So Inez, since you didn't answer that last one, how about you start this one first?
Well, I came to this country with, I would say very limited basic English skill. Indonesia was not like other country that have the education system in English. So I worked as a restaurant manager for a few years before I became an independent franchise of Arby's. The problem at that time was my challenge to build a small business in the US. I was lacking many things. Was lacking of a good English communication skill. I was lacking of asset. Was lacking of several years of tax returns as a company because our company was new. Was lacking of the resources as well because I didn't have any knowledge of legal, hiring, human resource, incorporation, and stuff like that. So the franchise of Arby's, they're pretty good in introducing and explaining, but other than that, they were just saying like, okay, you need to establish a company, but they didn't tell you like go with corporation, chapter S or LLC or something. So all those things, my husband and I, we were just we just self-studied ourselves. So and another challenge, of course, is the financing because I approached some lending bank at that time to borrow some construction loan. But since I didn't have any company tax returns, our company was very new. I just had personal tax returns. The bank said for the amount that I was asking, they will not be able to give us. So I start talking to our family members in Indonesia and some friends, and they chip in. They help us with some some agreement financing to help us to be able to pay for the construction in the mall. So and I I started with more units because I was thinking the investment would be less than building a standalone building outside in the street. So, but luckily, I think I was able to troubleshoot the problems at that time, which is the biggest one was the financing at that time. Besides other things, operation of a restaurant, I learned it being a few years in assistant manager position and restaurant manager later. But all the legal system, accounting, corporate tax, we just self-studied. We talked to some friends, we talked to some accountant that help us, and we talked to the headquarter of RBC at that time. So that was happening, I think, around year 2004, 2005. But then since then, we're pretty lucky. We made mistakes in our journey, but hey, mistakes is the best teacher, just like what people said.
Great advice. And sounds like Gotong Royong, right? You were talking about that as something you're proud of for Indonesia, and that's what it sounds like helped you along to establishing your franchise.
Similar, yes.
Yes, great story. Irfan?
Yeah, so for me, it's the perspective, right? Perspective of the co-workers or my employees that I work with. So coming in when they are new to the job or interviewing, they always think, oh, he's of an Indian descent, it's always been into the, the Indians are good at business or always have the money. It's a false narrative. It's not kind of one size fits all. So then once they are in the company, once they start to work, they get to know the backstory. Yes, I started off with nothing, in fact, when I came here, it was my mom and my younger sister. All three of us came together, and then my father and my elder brother came through. So they're learning that, yes, these guys came with nothing, and, the opportunity and this country, being in this country, working hard, provides you the opportunity. So that kind of inspires them as well. And but coming off, they have a certain image in mind, and then they learn more. So, that's what I have to share.
Thank you for sharing that. Yep, sometimes it's hard to break through those stereotypes, but we have to speak up, and we can't stay silent if we see it happening right in front of us. Sophie, you want to go next?
Yeah, I don't, as a growing up, because my professional journey began as more of the adulthood, right? I haven't encountered any obstacles, but the micro insults and assaults that happened were, during the younger years, right? Where, I would be called Chinese and I'm like, I'm Cambodian, or let's sit next to the Asian girl because, they're good at math, or, just these insult. And I think like, one issue is not funny, but it's, to me, you gotta have to laugh to keep from crying, right? I was working at a place, and I was getting introduced to like the big dog of the company. And I just smiled at him because I, of course, understanding tradition and just like, what do you say to a big dog? And I was a shy, adult growing up, and, wasn't really who I am right now, vocalizing stuff, and don't really care what comes out of my mouth. But like, keep your head low, and, that's the man who pays your bill. And he looked at the other guy and was like, does she speak English? And I'm like, and he was like, yeah, she speaks English. So I'm just like, that was like the adulthood of the racism that exists, and just seeing that in having that reflected on me when as a young adult going through the workforce was different,
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Similar to Irfan, I think stereotypes, again, follows us from not just in our professional journey, but also in our personal lives and from childhood on as well. So I'm glad you can now speak up and say what's on your mind. So, John?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry if I'm smiling or chuckling listening to these stories of challenge, because we've all been through it, and like I said, what can you do but laugh at it sometimes. So I work for a nonprofit, and the folks, the families, the youth that we represent or work for or serve are mostly low-income families. So, and I think many times this is counter to this understanding of Asians as the group that works hard and becomes very successful. But the fact is, there are many, many Asian Americans in this country and in Philadelphia that struggle, live in poverty, and have educational challenges. My work in the professional field is really to go out there as our nonprofit organization, going out there to policymakers, to government agencies, and say, here's the reality of the clients that we serve. Not everybody's successful. They have financial challenges. They have housing insecurity. They have food insecurity. So we're here to educate you and provide the data because we need resources and help to help these families get back up on their feet.
Yep, and thank you for pointing out that the basically the model minority myth that all Asians are successful, that might be true. Something that I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago about this, and it like kind of hit the nail on the head about Asians, and the misunderstanding is that Asians might be successful, but generally they're not prominent or influential, right? So like in Asian cultures, you're taught to be successful, like go to college, get a degree, and get a good job and make a lot of money and have a nice house and a car, but and that is defined as successful. But in society and in this country, to be influential or to be powerful, there's other characteristics that are attributed to that, which oftentimes are not associated with the Asian community, and partly because of the Asian culture and how we are taught to behave in this community. So I think, again, your point about not all Asian Americans are even successful is so true. And the more you dive into these statistics, the more that you will see the different countries and the different heritages that are doing well and the ones that are not. So it's important to highlight that. And Sophie, you mentioned about the discrimination that you went through, which is actually the perfect point for my next question to you all is, unfortunately, we have been seeing in the headlines quite a bit about hate crimes. And new research finds that hate crimes targeting the Asian American community have reached some unprecedented levels. The Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at California State University reports that anti-Asian crimes increased 339% in 2021 compared to 2020. Yet nearly 1/3 of Americans overall are unaware that attacks against Asian Americans are increasing. So I wanted to ask, you all have shared a little bit when we chatted about what you all have gone through, and Sophie, you shared a little bit. Sophie, I want to start with you, and maybe you could share a little bit more about what you shared with us last week about growing up in Philadelphia and how it wasn't easy, and how you're doing.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we were always talking about like ignorance is bliss, right? Coming to America, I know that my dad has told me stories when I was young, and just how, he would walk through the streets of Philadelphia carrying like a big load of rice over his shoulder and would get hit by, snowballs and stuff, and would, be yelled, just cursed at and treated differently. In that, when we came to America, it was us against, Cambodians against, the white population and the Black populations, because, it was like they're coming to America to steal our jobs. And there's always like, this bias of, just immigrants coming in to take jobs, right? So I know growing up in Philadelphia through the neighborhoods, it's always been, fights. The subway issue is not a new thing. And when I was growing up, people have want to have an excuse to, if you are perceived to be weak, they pick on you, right? I would see where, we're walking with a group, other folks, would come and just pick fights, right? And it's either, fight or flight. And that was a lot of that growing up. There was no video cameras to document events that were happening then. I think now it's, a time where, folks are getting together and highlighting these issues and bringing awareness to the hate that they've experienced as a child.
Would you say that over the last 2 years since COVID, you've seen a difference, or has it been consistent for you here in Philly?
I mean, growing up was really bad in Philly.
Growing up was bad. Okay.
So, and then even as like a young adult going, there were some issues with like South Philadelphia High School. There was an issue with a lot of Chinese immigrant students getting picked on, but it's there, it's constant. But I think again, the media picks up, and then it's not even, I don't even think it's reporting on a lot more of the stories that are happening. I think for one that are reported, there's many more where people are like, the law is not here to help protect me. What am I going to do when I report it? Like, what's going to happen? The perpetrator will never get arrested, get a slap on the wrist, all of these issues that have that we've seen law enforcement don't do for our community. It's still an issue that's ongoing. So, again, one incident that's highlighted in the news, there may be plenty more that are not reported at all.
Yep, good point. Language could be a barrier as well, right? Not knowing how to report the crime if you don't speak the language or don't speak it well. Irfan, you also shared with us your story and also how religion plays a factor in this.
Yeah, so my story resonates more so with places of worship. So I've never really encountered any, racism or criticism at place of work, and especially if you're working at an airport, high risk, or where you always have to be alert. But these days, with the climate and houses of worship being a target, I identify myself as a Muslim. We go to prayers as a family. So my wife, both my girls, we can go in together. Yes, and some of my Muslim friends even question that what you can go together and you can sit together, because most of the people just identify or see one kind of Muslim, either a Shia, Sunni, but there are several different components or sections in those main branches of that. So even at our place of worship, we just went through an active shooter program and all of that. So with the geopolitical climate that we are in this country and all that, so you have to be vigilant. And when I share this, even with my Muslim friends, and they kind of question me because I identify myself as Muslim, but I don't do the traditional fasting or what have you. So they kind of see it in a different way as well.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure you've experienced some things that I personally can't relate to, but it's important that you do share your stories with all of us so that we understand, a little bit more that we don't get exposed to on a daily basis. John, you also have a Philly story.
Yeah, so during these last 2 years, I've experienced racism personally more than I have in my previous lifetime. So that we are in a period of time where there's significant racial issues in this country. Also in Philadelphia, our nonprofit has been engaged in identifying racist crimes, assaults. We've been working with the population who are victims of racism. We have because unless we get engaged and insert ourselves and be proactive, this is going to be ongoing. We know this from the history of America. This is not the first time that the Asian population has experienced racism. It won't be the last time. But if we are working for organizations or nonprofits, we have the ability and we have the power to sort of exercise what leverage we have. And we've had many victims come to us for help. So we've we've had meetings with the police. We've had meetings with the Philadelphia School District. Someone just mentioned the students that have experienced assaults on the SEPTA transportation. We've met with SEPTA. We've met with the Human Relations Commission, both in the Philadelphia level as well as the state Pennsylvania level. And we've met with the Department of Justice. I think most people are sincere about wanting to solve this problem, but to get an agency or get a policy shift to really focus on finding solutions to this takes a lot of effort. We're talking about large systems that takes a very long time to change and move. You know, just in Chinatown alone, we've had a restaurant worker get off of work, not only being assaulted, but berated and calling the effing Chinese, you effing Chinese, you brought the virus here. And this causes people to be afraid to leave their houses to go to work, to go to shop, because the distance between someone's home and someone's place of work or shopping, that's where an incident can happen. So our organization has worked really hard to try to solve some of these problems and really get the attention, but it's not so easy. For instance, the school district was satisfied in responding to us that they have a website for people who are victims of bullying or crime to how to report it, but that's not good enough, right? I think government systems have to figure out how to break down the barriers to solve these issues of racism and victimization where people actually are too afraid to report it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to share a graphic and I didn't share it, but since you mentioned it, John, I thought this would be, let me share it now so people can see it. There's an organization called, can you all see my screen? Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. There's an organization called Stop AAPI Hate. You all may, John, you're shaking your head. Yes, you all may have heard of it, but they shared a national report last year, at the end of last year, and sharing the different types of discrimination that has occurred to Asian Americans. And I was surprised to see all of this because I'm not necessarily thinking about all these kinds of discrimination, but to see it, right, from harassment to physical assault to shunning to being spat upon, vandalism, denial of service, barred from transportation. Again, the stat that I reported was based on AAPI, Stop AAPI Hate, which is a 339% increase in just a year. And like a few of you have said, there's probably a lot more happening, but it's just not being reported because people don't want to be that person that reports it, or there's a language barrier or not being familiar of how to do it and whether it will be taken seriously or not. I did want to circle back on this question too, and John, with you. So what are you doing about it? And you had a really good story about the COVID vaccine and not necessarily about AAPI discrimination, but how you and your organization are helping people of the AAPI community and finding those areas where there's gaps and filling it in. So can you share your story about the COVID vaccine and how you all got that going?
Yeah, it's all about really speaking up when we see something that's not right. All of us can do that, right? So for the COVID vaccine, if we remember, last spring was when the Philadelphia Health Department launched the vaccination. And right away we knew that was a problem, because in order for an individual to get the vaccine, they had to have internet access to register for the vaccination. That was the only way you could get it last spring. In addition, everything was done in English. So you had to have internet access and read or write English in order to register your name, address, and phone number to get the vaccination. In addition, you had to have an email address. If you were short any one of those things or didn't speak the language, you weren't going to get vaccinated. So what our organization did within a couple of weeks of the city launching their vaccination was that we mobilized our forces and we got a team of pharmacists to help do vaccinations at our Crane Chinatown Community Center. And it wasn't just for the Chinese people. We had all groups of Asians coming to our center. In the first 4 weeks alone, we vaccinated 2,000 people. And even to this day, we continue vaccinations once a week. So it was really about us providing a group of people a level of comfort, a place that they could trust, and not forcing them to meet our expectations and standards, but making sure that we as an organization met the people where they were at. So if you don't speak English, we had someone who could speak your language. If you didn't know how to register, we had someone to help you register with vaccination. So although it's government always requires you to meet their standards and regulations. So how can government change and turn this around and meet people where they are at, where their skill level is at, where their reading level is at?
Kudos to you and your organization for doing that, John. Really great job. Thank you for doing that. And I hope you got the coverage, the story got the coverage in Philly, because I didn't hear about it until you spoke about it last week. So kudos to you again for doing that.
Thank you.
Yep. So to all of you, I want to ask, for a lot of the folks on this call are not from the Asian American Pacific Islander community. So how can those that are not part of the AAPI community be sensitive to the different identities and not be offensive? What advice do you have for non-AAPI colleagues, friends, acquaintances? Ines, do you want to start?
I would say, well, US now is a diverse country, so we cannot avoid having more and more people with different ethnic backgrounds coming to this country. And this country has provided, I would say, more freedoms than, especially if you guys know, I left Indonesia because of the political situation, because of the ethnic harassment. I'm a mixed Indonesian Chinese, so I think I mentioned to you last time, Api, that was part of the reason why I wanted to bring my family to the US, because I experienced discrimination in Indonesia at that time. Maybe now it's a lot better than before. So we're diverse. Some people might have language barrier coming to this country, but I know a lot of people, they're coming with a very, very, I would say, excellent professional background, excellent talents, lots of resources. So these people that have English language barrier, they actually, if they are given opportunities, they will be able to help this country with a lot of things that people maybe never thought before. I mentioned long time ago, my son was at high school. My son is bilingual Indonesian English. And then there was an internship in NSA, National Security Agency at that time. And he applied and he got accepted to, and he got interviewed by NSA in Indonesian language. And he was offered a job to translate what NSA intercept from, at that time, was Aceh. This is part of Indonesia that they suspected involved in some terrorism. So it's being multilingual. We are able to help to contribute to this community in perhaps different ways that never thought before. So do not give up to continue giving chances to people who have English language barrier. Give them time, give them opportunity, give them responsibilities. They'll do it because they have the knowledges, they have the experience. They will help, in many areas can benefit from there, whether it's trading. America is short of supply chain right now. A lot of people out there, they want to export to the US. They have the containers ready. They just don't know how to approach America, how to export something to Home Depot, Lowe's, or things like that. So it's in many areas that we can, people, immigrants to this country can contribute to many areas, not only cultural, culinary, collaboration, trading, many things. So I would say, give those people chances. You'll be surprised what they can do to help.
Great statement. And also, I want you to share what you're doing at your business about for your non-English speakers. Can you talk about what you're doing with building your manual?
Yes. So in Philadelphia, we have about 35 people. Before pandemic, we had about 10 different nationalities from these 35 people. Lots of them we hired. We actually working with we were working with refugees, asylum organizations, because it was hard to find people. So some of them came, some of them were newcomers. At that time, when we talked to them, they didn't even have social security numbers issued to them yet. So once the social security numbers issued, we tried to batch them, and the challenge was in passing the batch exam test, because they're in English. So I think at that time we worked together, they were able to pass the test. But still, I would say to them, English is the language here. So yes, you are welcome to enroll in any ESL courses that you're already enrolled. Our training manual, not only in English right now, but we start taking pictures, photos, and videos. So if I want to teach somebody that don't speak English at all, I show them how to make California roll in video. I show them how to cut salmon in video. I show them, like, you know, it's in different things, how you stack your summer roll, how you stack your egg rolls, how you cook your shumai, or how to ring up at the register. So things like that. And because they really want to work and stay in the US, they really tried so hard. You know, they joined ESL courses, and give them about 3 months, they already able to communicate in basic English. Now it's just a matter of how you keep telling them this is how the company wants you to entertain the guests, because basic English language, you know, it's different from how you entertain the guests at the sushi bar. So that's another step of try to pick the sentences, how to sound friendly, explaining to the guests, help them here and there. So ESL just telling you the basic communication, but for hospitality, there's another way of, you know, English language skill that now we try to train them. What to say, how you troubleshoot guest complaint, how you explain that, you know, this is gluten-free, not gluten-free. It takes time, but so far, I'm amazed with these people. They are really, really trying hard to understand.
Yeah, no, that's awesome what you're doing. And I know when we were chatting, Adam Mitchell, our deputy CRO, got some ideas as well for what we could do here at the airport. But hopefully you can share that manual with us, or at least with me. I would like to see how to make a California roll as well, because I don't do that, but it sounds like I could do it after maybe reading this manual. So thank you for doing that. Irfan, how about you? What advice do you have for your non-AAPI colleagues?
Well, this is a start, right? We're here to learn about each other, know more. And last I checked, I think Terminal A West needs some employment. So if you can, please travel, pick your destinations, you know, and you'll learn so much about the culture, heritage, and, you know, even enjoy, I guess, you know, the languages, the food, the culture, and you get real up close. You know, pick one of these countries and, you know, be open. And lastly, which is, you know, getting to know your community, your coworkers, and find somebody, be friends with them, and you can learn a lot.
Sophie?
Yes. So having an open mind, right? And to learn new things and address. When I was like, I'm always interested in human behavior because I've always felt like an outsider. So in social work class, we've always taught like you can't serve the public without addressing your biases and prejudice. So one, you know, cool thing is that if you're, you know, you have a bias towards a certain cultural group, you know, make plans to, you know, attend their place of worship or where they go. People like to stick with people that look like them, right? So sometimes that, hinders your growth in understanding culture, and be an ally. The city of Philadelphia has a city resource group. There's, an AAPI specific group that we meet. Allies are welcome to empower and encourage each other and be a network for each other. And we love food. Food always unites people. So we always like plan places to eat.
Yes, food is a community builder, right? We need to make our tables longer and our fences shorter. So food always brings people together. John?
Well, I'm going to walk out the door after this session and go buy some food because I'm hungry after all this conversation. But all kidding aside, so we run a youth program and we actually are part of the Summer Work Ready program. If there's an opportunity, any of your departments, divisions, or companies to hire interns throughout the year, diversify your sources of where interns come from. And if there's an opportunity for us to source some AAPI students, I think it'll be a great learning experience for them to get them outside of the community and learn what's out there as they try to figure out their road towards post-secondary education. So yeah, internship opportunities.
Wonderful. Yes. And John, if you do have any folks that are interested, I'm sure our HR department will, be willing to have a conversation and figure out a process of how to get them enrolled in our co-op or intern program. So you can always count the airport as a resource for that. So thank you for sharing that. So it's at 3:08 and we have 22 minutes left in this roundtable. We do want to open it up to the folks on this call. If you have any questions based on what you heard or you haven't heard, we would love for you to ask the question. Here's your opportunity. There's no wrong question. We're all friends here, and we won't take anything to it won't be offensive. If you don't feel comfortable asking, that's okay. But here's your chance to either type it in or feel free to come on camera and unmute and ask the question. And while you all think about that, I'm going to ask everyone a question. Is who or can you name one AAPI person that has been a role model to you or influential either today or growing up? I asked this question because in one of the reports that I read is that 58% of Americans can't name a prominent Asian American. And those that do name Asian Americans, they name Bruce Lee, who's not American, or Jackie Chan. So it would be good to talk about Asian Americans more often. So they don't have to be famous. They could be your own family member or friends, but who have you looked up to? Anyone could go. I don't want to pick on anybody, so feel free to unmute and answer this question.
Go ahead, Sophie.
Sorry, John. I could go growing up. The only role models I had were my parents, right? My dad came here, learned a trade. My mom hustled and made stuff. I think that's where my entrepreneurship and making stuff came from. We didn't have role models. We didn't have famous Cambodian people or, Disney just started movies that had that represents the Southeast Asian culture, right? So, now there are emerging leaders in our neighborhoods, people who I know who of AAPI descent who are doing great things in the community. They're not famous, but they are people who are, that are role models to me, because throughout it all, as they remain silent, working in the background, they are emerging in, the world today to bring voice to the Asian American community.
Yeah, and I was going to say that I look into fields that are really hard to get into, or there's very few Asian Americans. And I think one of the most difficult fields for any person, regardless of background, to get into is comedy. So we're seeing quite a few Asian Americans in comedy, and I think that's just great.
Yeah. oh my God, her name is skipping me with the red glasses. What's her name? She's
Oh, yeah.
awesome.
I know.
Yes, she's
Ali Wong.
Ali Wong.
Ali
Yes.
Wong, yeah,
Oh my
Ali Wong.
goodness. If you haven't checked her out, please check her out. She happens to be pregnant in both of her, I think both of her, what do you call it, stint? But she's hilarious. Ali Wong is a great stand-up comedian. Irfan or Inez?
Oh, sorry, Irfan, go ahead.
No, please, after you.
Oh, thank you. I guess any AAPI person that work hard every day, never give up, considering their challenges, like Miss Api, you know, you're one of the role models too. I just knew you for a few days. I look at LinkedIn and your perform. I mean, you know, thank you. I mean, Philadelphia Airport should be proud to have you.
Oh, so much. I appreciate it.
Another person, maybe I would say BTS. If you guys are familiar with Korean boy singer, BTS have language barrier. Maybe only one of the 7 boys knew how to speak English, but they're pretty successful selling their music and entertainment globally.
K-pop, right? Is that Korean? Is that
I
the
would
same
say
K-pop?
They call it K-pop, Korean pop, something like that.
Irfan?
Yeah, for me, you know, I can never take off my first boss. You know, she was a lady and, you know, her name was Sunita, but she called herself Susie. So, but even though she changed my name, I was always inspired by her. You know, it was, if you've been to New York and, you know, Manhattan, you see the newsstand. That was my first job. We didn't have a POS system or a cash register, but she will hustle every day, show up to work, put in the hours, put in the time, and, you know, just giving the change or what have you. And if you would drop a coin, she would tell by the sound of the noise, Irfan, you dropped a dime. So addressing me, she would say Irfan, and with the customer, she would use an American name. So I can never forget that lady, because adapting to that, supporting a family and, you know, starting her own business. So she was always a role model figure for me, and always I knew I could do it. You know, the easiest way is to replicate somebody successful so you could be half their successful. So for me, that's her.
Yeah, I'm glad that your experience with her has a positive end to it, or story still that continues. So that's great. I see a lot of love in the chat box here. I don't see any questions, but there's yes, we love BTS. Awkwafina, yes, Awkwafina. If you haven't seen the movie Crazy Rich Asians, that's the movie where I think I saw her at, and then I learned who she was. I didn't know who she was before that. Milton says, my daughter loves Forever 21. The founder is Don Chang. I did not know that. I did not know that it had an Asian American, I guess, founder. Good to know. Good to know. While we're waiting, maybe people are still thinking of questions. I'm going to ask you another one. What advice do you have for other AAPIs, especially younger ones?
Take risk, I would say. You know, take a risk, and especially when you're younger, right? You could take that risk. You can afford to take risk, and, you know, don't try to follow the path or what have you. And always that fear is there that would I be accepted in the mainstream, whether you chose, you know, entertainment or business or what have you. You know, I would say take risk, and, you know, the good thing I have learned about this country is, you know, they're very open. You know, once you might get little, you know, you have to break through, but at least they're open and recipient.
Yeah,
that's been my experience.
And someone to look up to too, right? So there's a lot more people to look up to that's Asian American. And so it's probably easier to take a risk. It's never easy to take a risk, but if you see other folks that look like you, that share a similar background, doing things that you thought you could do, it definitely helps you to take that risk. So great advice. How about you, Inez? What advice do you have for younger AAPIs?
I would say appreciate your past, appreciate your background. support each other. This is a crazy time of the world right now. Not sure what's going on. And for future, just motivate each other to do something better. And then, who knows, we came to this country maybe from zero, maybe one day we become hero, something like that, maybe.
Yeah, great advice. It hasn't always been easy to appreciate the culture, especially when you're young and you're trying to balance, right, both worlds. And I see Sophie shaking her head. I've been there. But as you get older, you appreciate it and you're thankful that maybe your parents forced you to do all those things. So now I'm thankful for all of that. So Sophie or John?
Yeah, you can't tell a young person anything, because I remember at the age nobody can tell me anything. I knew it all, right? I'm invincible, and so I mean, but those young kids who are listening, I would say, network is important, and all the things the adults are telling you are not or that you think is not good for you, or probably the best advice you can get when you're a young kid, right? So I mean, but we're all allowed to make our own mistakes. Just having that mentor or somebody who's there to handhold you or guide you through life is important.
Yep, great advice.
Yeah, and I would add to that I think the young people should make an effort to learn about all cultures.
Yep.
I think that's really important because America is a country where there's many different cultures that have immigrated to this country. So I think we all want to learn about one another's history and past, right? Because every group has something that they've contributed to this country. And secondly, along with those lines, I think for school curricula, I think the more we push school administrators to diversify its history teaching, right? There's nothing wrong with George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and the founding fathers, right? But let's diversify so students, people at a young age, can really learn about the diversity of this country and who contributed to this country, whether it's the Chinese laborers building railroads or whatever. I think there's so much here, and we're just not getting enough at the elementary and high school level.
Yeah, and I think I read yesterday that New Jersey became the latest state to pass legislation that requires K through 12 to teach AAPI history. So I think so far Illinois, Connecticut, and New Jersey, and I think Pennsylvania isn't there yet, but I think they're working on it. So it's great to see that happening. Like I said, a lot of AAPI history, I didn't even know there was Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month when I was younger. I knew there was Black History Month. I knew there was Women's History Month, but I didn't know there was Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So I had to learn that myself like 2 years ago, what that was. So it's great. Let's see, chat box still getting a lot of love. So thank you for this discussion. Thank you for being transparent. I have one last question for you all, and then I'll let you guys go if there are no more questions, which is, can you share a story or experience that's influenced you in becoming who you are today? A deep question. Something that you've experienced, you've seen, you've heard. Ines.
I think I learned a lot from the history or from experience of many AAPI in this country. They came from different background, Avi. They came from, some of them maybe they were just housewife in their country, moved to America, became multi-jobs handler, from housewife all the way to work 1 or 2 jobs. So I guess a lot of these people inspired me because, hey, if they can do it, or they survive in the US, or they excel in the US, I think we can do it too.
Yep.
I can share. It's not a great. I mean, it's a story. So it's finding voice in being able to scream at somebody, right? So an experience was that I looked out the door one day, and one of my at that time, family member, ex's family, was getting picked on by a group of Black kids throwing rocks and stuff at her. So I yelled real loud and like became like really like aggressive and like, get out of here, stop picking on her. And it surprised me that they all ran away, right? So just using your voice to stop bad things from happening to other people. Even though, I mean, in some situation it's violent and, you know, you may put yourself in harm's way, but, you know, if you're in enough comfortable situation where you can say something to stop that harassment of, you know, violence against another person, I think is a, you know, great opportunity to do so, right? And diffusing conflict, like this had nothing to do with AAPI, but like, you know, this at the CVS the other day, this one lady of African descent, you could tell she had an accent, and you know, the old lady was a South Philly white lady who was like, found out she was new and was really impatient with her, screaming, "I want your manager." And then, you know, older Black man behind me was screaming at her, like, you know, practice patience and stuff like that. So they're about to get into it. And I just found my voice to say, let's practice patience, and everybody just take a breath. And everybody took a breath, right? Just being that voice to calm situations down and stuff like that. It's, you know, I've has helped me, you know, help other people.
Yes, patience is a great trait to have. So great story. John?
Yeah, so giving back to the community that I grew up in is really a privilege for me. And I think there's two sources for this. I think my parents, who moved here from China to Philadelphia, never left Chinatown, was committed to not only their own family, but helping their neighbors, volunteering at their associations to help other families who needed help. And also Father Tom Betts, who was the assistant pastor at the Holy Redeemer Chinese Catholic Church and School here in Chinatown. He spent 25 years in this community, learned to speak the Chinese language, and even though he's Caucasian, he built so much trust in the community that the native Chinese speakers went to him for advice and help.
Wow.
So I think you know, these people actually led me down this path to work in this nonprofit.
Wow, great story. Yep. Irfan?
Yeah, so reflecting back, you know, looking back the journey, it was mostly the necessity that made you do things. But looking back to the culture, it's just, you know, do your best every day, work hard, think as a family, and, you know, and just not, you know, sometimes you have to forget long term. Just give your best today, and, you know, eventually you'll get there. So I'm very glad the culture of working hard, being honest, being ethical, that pays a long way.
Yep, I think so. I think, you know, our Asian, the traits that are usually attributed to Asians are make us who we are, and I think it's a great thing, and we shouldn't lose that. But I think it's also important others to recognize that those are the traits that make that are important to the Asian culture, and that it shouldn't be diminished into something less, because it's not necessarily what is normal in the Western hemisphere. Jonathan, you have your hand raised.
I do, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all so much for your thoughtful answers, for a great conversation, for your vulnerability, for just bringing your authentic selves to this conversation. Can we just give all of the attendees, give them a virtual round of applause, whether with your chat option or to take your mute off and give them a clap?
Very well done, definitely. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all so much. And of course, to our own Abby Abulingam, thank you so much for moderating this discussion. Just really appreciative of this. in addition to being the director of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'm also a co-lead for the Racial Equity Advisory Council. And I shared a link to our AAPI webpage in the chat. Please feel free to check it out. We do have some events that are still going on through the end of this week. We have an employee cookbook that we're receiving submissions for up until Thursday. So please feel free to check that out and submit some of the delicious recipes and cuisine that's out there. We have an AAPI latest and greatest list that gives you the opportunity to share restaurants, museums, exhibits that really, capture the AAPI culture. And we have a really cool AAPI edition of Thursday tomorrow at 12 noon. So please tune in and attend that as well. And we also have some really cool exhibits throughout the airport that highlight AAPI artists. So, again, just really want to thank everybody for their attendance today. And of course, to our panelists and moderator, just a round of applause again. We're really appreciative of just a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, John. Thank you, Inez, Irfan. Thank you for sharing your stories. I hope you all found this as beneficial as we all did. I know I learned from each of you. I learned what Gotong Royo is, and I learned about how, John, you helped so many Chinese Americans in Chinatown to get COVID vaccine. So all of you had just wonderful stories and making a difference in our community. So thank you.
I echo Api's sentiment, and I also wanted to give a shout out to a couple of REACT members that helped bring this event to fruition. Adam Mitchell, who is really the architect of this REACT Roundtable event. So again, kudos for Adam for your this being really your brainchild, and then also for Deatrice Isaac, who is the lead for our cultural celebrations. Thank you, Deatrice, as well, for all of your hard work in bringing this event to its amazing fruition. So thanks again to all the members of REACT, and again to all of our DOA family that attended this event. The support is very important, so we appreciate your presence here.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.